For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened.
And the Lord Yahweh said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. Exodus chapter 10, verse 21. Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honor to our venerable apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and peace and blessings to the Lord's elect, the house of David. All right, so Brother Aharon coming back at you with another lesson. Lord willing to be edifying and uplifting unto the elect. And I'm going to title this, There Will Be an Emergency Energy Crisis. Okay, there will be an emergency energy crisis. All right, and today is April the 28th, 2025. And we are, let me see here, we are about, in 3 days, we're going to be in the month of May. Okay, and all indication is pointing to a month of turmoil, or at least the beginning of months of turmoil here in America, Babylon the Great. All right, now remember last year, I did a lesson going into the lights flickering. All right, because they were saying that during the summer months, we're going to have, rolling blackouts, right, to kind of help with the energy crisis that was going on, so-called last year, right? The EPA was going to be getting involved and so on and so forth, right? And, from what we know, nothing came out of it, right? But again, these things are all done in preparation for something later down the line, all right? Sometimes they do certain things. They run certain drills and do certain tests, all right, for years down the line, okay, months down the line, all right? It's all about the preparation of the minds of the people, all right? Because the last thing they want is for people to panic or, start going against the so-called narrative, right? So they do certain things just to test the pulse of the people, right? And also to get them prepared for when this thing finally hits, how they'll be able to handle, all right, the mass chaos, right? Now, I mentioned the word crisis in the title, okay? And a crisis is when you really look at it, is a sudden acceleration of what they call historical processes, right? In a terrifying manner, right? Which is typically they do these things, or it's sufficient to release economic or social or sometimes moral forces, right? That is, of unseen power. Okay, and then eventually it makes it where going back to the status quo, all right, it becomes impossible. Okay, just like you had the CV-19 crisis. Post CV-19, you have never been able to go back to a life prior to CV-19. Okay, everything has become digital. Everything has become AI incorporated, right? It's become the norm to go to a store and have certain checks and certain measurements, all right, in place. All right, it's become normal to go to a Whole Foods and see a contactless payment, all right, all throughout the store, where previously it was looked at as weird or strange, right? I believe the first state that was pushing that was, I believe it was Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, Washington, I should say, right? Seattle, Washington, and that's out west, northwest. And I remember there was a Whole Foods. This was like 2018 or 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And they were talking about palm payments, and everybody was looking at it like, yo, this is weird. This is like some futuristic stuff, right? And then CV happened and it became the norm, where people actually prefer to have contactless because they didn't want to get sick with the so-called virus or whatever, right? They had all these, they had this, the plexiglass, right? When you go to a store and then you have the cashier behind the glass and then you right behind it and then you talking, it's like, it's just the stupidest thing, but they had it, for so long, and people kind of got used to that, You know, another thing was the mask wearing, right? They created a crisis in order to get people into these masks, which didn't really protect them because majority of people wearing masks still got sick. Okay, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, they create these emergencies. All right, these urgent emergencies in order to bring change. All right, drastic changes that normally wouldn't have been accepted by the public. Okay, if those emergencies never took place. All right, and I believe we're starting to see the shift into the rationing of energy all throughout the world. Okay, they're pushing heavy, all right, for Agenda 2030. Okay, where you own nothing and you be happy, and we're in 2025, so we're pretty much halfway point of the decade of change. Okay, and you know, getting towards the halfway point of this year, we're starting to see these things ramp up. These changes that they're going to be taking effect soon, starting to ramp up. Right, we're talking, like I said, energy crisis is going all throughout the whole entire spectrum. All right, we're talking not just food. All right, not just electricity, but everything else that comes with that. Okay, because we live in a system that predicates on electricity. You can't do anything without being on some form of grid in today's society. All right, majority of people are online. You have to have Wi-Fi. You have to have electricity for that to happen. You know, you notice every company, damn near every company now, has some form of official dealings with mass groups of people via online services. Okay, banks, it's easier and more convenient to deal on an online capacity than to actually go in person. Okay, you could literally deposit a check without leaving your house, but back then you had to actually take it to the bank and then they do all this extra shit for you, right? So there's a lot of things that's being changed, you know, rapidly, you know, and these so-called crises will only exacerbate the situation. Okay, at least speed it up. Okay, so we don't have 10 years, 15, 20 years. Nah, these things are happening on a daily basis, but they don't want people to be alarmed. All right, because these are changes that are going to be the mainstay. All right, so they have to, you know, lull you to sleep before they bring these things out. But nonetheless, let's get into a few articles here just to prove the point that we are indeed heading into an energy crisis. All right, these are all signs, as it says in the book of Proverbs, the 22nd chapter, that a prudent man foreseeth the evil to come and hideth himself. Right. In other words, you're making preparation for the reality that's going soon hit this place, and everyone is going to be affected by it. Like I said, we're all on the grid some way, somehow. Okay. If you have a social security number, if you have a bank account / bank card, if you have a phone, anything that you use as a device to make your life a little bit easier and convenient, these things are about to be taken away soon. All right. And then you're going to be presented with the MOTB, which is going to kind of bring you back to some form of access, give you some form of access back to the old way of doing things, which would be the new way of doing things via the CHIP. All right. So let's read this here real quick. It says, grid conditions are currently stable, says SWEPCO after emergency outages. Okay, the word emergency comes back in play again. As a matter of fact, let's look up the word emergency. Now, let's see what it says here. All right. It says emergency, says unforeseen occurrence requiring immediate attention. Right. So the definition I gave of crisis, a crisis is an emergency. Right. A crisis is an emergency. Okay. A sudden acceleration of processes that are in a terrifying manner. Right. That is supposed to release some form of economic, social and moral forces of unseen power. All right. Which often makes returning back to the status quo impossible, you know? So an emergency here, the online etymology dictionary says, unforeseen occurrences requiring immediate attention. Okay? So through the emergency, we see new laws and new ways of living emerge, right? Emerge, the word emerge is a verb, it's an action. It says to rise from or out of anything that surrounds, covers, or conceals, to come forth. Right? Problem, reaction, solution. The Hegelian dialectic. Okay? To appear as from concealment. Right? And there's a quote, I forget exactly who said it, but he said, no major event on the world stage is by accident. Okay? No major event on the world stage happens by accident. Okay, if it's on a global scale where everyone knows about it, it was carefully orchestrated that way to gain a certain reaction. Hence, they could bring a certain solution to that reaction or problem. Okay, so all these things that we're going to be seeing and we're about to read right now is all carefully orchestrated. Okay, so let's read. It says, grid conditions are currently stable after emergency outages over the weekend that affected more than 30,000 people in Bossier and Cato parishes. On Saturday, April 26, around 4:30 p.m., SWEPCO said they were notified by the Southwest Power Pool, which is SPP, of a grid protection event that may cause disruption within the SWEPCO service area. Okay, a grid protection event, right? Whatever the hell that means. They always use this double speak to confuse people who might not be in the know. It's all stupid jargon, really. All right, they could just simplify and tell you exactly what it is, but they say all this politically correct shit to throw people off what's really actually going on. Okay, they beautify the madness. Okay, so it's easier to be accepted, right? It says Bossier Parish will see outages until SPP directs SWEPCO to restore power. Okay, now what's the reason? Oh, it's a grid protection event. What does that even mean? What actually happened? Right? It says SWEPCO released the following statement regarding the outage. Quote, temporary emergency grid protection outages are now in effect across parts of our service territory in Bossier Parish, end quote. Actually, there's more. Hold on, slide. There's more. The SWEPCO team works with the Southwest Power Pool to manage the flow of electricity in our area. SPP required us to take emergency outages in specific areas on the power lines that provide our customers with service. This action was taken to prevent conditions that could cause widespread damage to power lines and equipment that could take days or longer to fix. We are working and coordinating with SPP and will provide additional updates as soon as possible. Now, the first thing I thought about when I was reading this was, this is very interesting and calculated and very diabolical, because this is all part of you sound the alarm to get people's attention, and then you lull them back to sleep. And you do it enough times where when they hear the alarm, they're already programmed to think that there's going to be a solution. They just have to wait. You see what I'm saying? For example, if there's a fire that goes off, people automatically in their minds, you call 911, the fire trucks get there, and then they take out the fire for you, right? But eventually, when you get to a point where in your mind, you're just conditioned to think, oh, if there's a fire, there's going to be fire trucks eventually, right? What if there's a fire, but there's no fire trucks? You're not prepared to take the fire out on your own. You're not even looking to use a fire extinguisher. Most people don't even know how to use that, right? And that's a fact, okay? Most people don't even know how to direct water in their house to put out a fire if there's no fire people over there. You know, most people are not even taught to do that. They teach you to just call 911 if there's an emergency. They don't teach you to take matters into your own hands to try to see what you can do about it, right? And meanwhile, your whole house is about to burn down. If you don't have insurance, you're effed. You see? So the system, America's system, is built and designed to have people be afraid to take matters into their own hands, but rather rely and depend on some outside force to come and solve the situation for them. So the point is, if those people who are there to help you, quote unquote, help you, are the ones bringing the pain and suffering, who are you going to go to for your help? If you don't know how to, fend for yourself, and you always rely and depend on some form of, you go to the grocery store, people don't even know how to, now I'm getting tight. Now I'm getting mad, yo. People don't know how to set up a garden in their backyard, right? They don't know how to understand the weather, read the weather patterns to know, if it's going to rain or, whatever, right? When to start gathering, when to start planting. These things, people don't understand these things, man. The typical American is dumb enough not to understand any of this shit. So even the slightest form of crisis that typically in a different world they will manage and get through, Americans are not going to get through it. Now imagine just a slight little inconvenience could cause all this trauma. What if it happened on a large scale all throughout the states, right? Major calamities in major cities. We're not just talking about electricity going out. We're talking so-called T attacks all over the place, man. And the FBI been coming out, and for months they've been saying that these things were going to be happening. Right before Trump came in, they were saying oh yeah, there's going to be these sleeper cells and all this shit. When the time comes and they let these niggas out, how are people going to handle these things, man? Like we keep saying, that sudden destruction, that sudden acceleration of hell, because it happens out of nowhere, and then it just keeps on going and it doesn't stop. You know, one thing after the other, and it's all different crises all at the same time, otherwise known as a polycrisis. Okay? When there's no food on the shelves, there's no electricity, you know, healthcare is becoming a problem, the trucks are not running. It's gonna be a hellish society, man. And then they're gonna enact martial law. And once the martial law is enacted, forget about your constitution, because post-Civil War, the Constitution hasn't been put back in place. All right, for those who don't know. Okay? The Constitution was set aside during the Civil War and has never been in effect since. All right, and that's a fact. You can do your research and find out. All right? They got something known as the Patriot Act, which is there to emasculate the Bill of Rights. Okay? People don't even know that they're owned, all right, by basically everything you own, everything you have, all your possessions is owned by the Federal Reserve. Okay? There's a lot of things that's wrong in this damn country that's been set up since 1776 all the way till now, and now is about to play a role. Trump comes in with all these executive orders. Have you ever read about the FEMA executive orders and what happens when there's an emergency like that? Life does not, it's not fun no more. All right? It's not fun no more, man. And these are all the steps they're going to take to get to that point. Okay? So let's go back to this, right? It says, the outages are primarily affecting customers in Northwest Louisiana, primarily in Bossier and Cato parishes. Please know we always strive to provide our customers with advance notice of an outage whenever possible, and unfortunately, that was not possible in this emergency situation. Okay, and it's going to happen a lot. Where emergencies are about to happen, they know about it, but they don't tell you about it before it happens. So now you're caught off guard. And then whatever happens, you know, the side effects of you not knowing these things are about to happen, you just got to deal with it. Because they'll only give you a small little, a damage control PR notice. Like, oh, you know, we're working hard to restore services. We will let you know once the service has been restored. It could go on for days, sometimes weeks, with this type of shit. You know, because you rely and depend on these people to fix everything for you. That's the problem with Americans, man. They depend on the system for everything. When the system goes down, you go down with it. Okay? Your grocery store is about to be empty. There's another article we're going to get into. Grocery stores are about to be empty. They're saying from next month, which is in a few more days. All right, you got May Day, May 1st, right, all the way through. They said that these tariffs that Trump has been putting on these different countries, you're about to start seeing the effects. Okay, because it takes about 30 to 50 days, all right, for these ships to get the products and bring it all the way over here. And then it ends up in your store shelves where you can get them. But when those tariffs hit earlier this month, all right, that's what, almost 30 days now. So you're pretty much like about 10 to 20 days before you're going to start seeing the real effects of these tariffs. And that's going to cause panic buying. People are going to start running through the stores, and that's going to cause scarcity, and that's going to cause more inflation. Or in this case, you're going to have to buy product, you know, at a higher price because there's less of it, you know, until there's no more. All right, so they're about to put the squeeze on the people, man. All right, and that's going to cause a lot of jobs to be lost as well. You know, so uncomfortable times are coming for sure, man. All right, darkness for real. Okay, it says, in this instance, our grid operators were instructed to take immediate action, which did not give us time to inform you before the outage occurred. Bro, all it takes is an emergency update. That's all it takes, bro. Quick update. You know, this is what's going on. We're going to be doing something with the power stuff, whatever. So your area might get affected. You know, we're working hard to fix it, blah, blah, blah. So hang tight or some shit, you know. It says at 9 p.m., and this is an end quote, by the way. It says at 9 p.m., SWEPCO gave another update stating that they were in the process of restoring power to customers throughout the hour. They said they expect all outages to be resolved Saturday night. By 9:30 p.m. or 9:13 p.m., there were 8,747 SWEPCO customers still waiting to have their power restored. On April 27th, which was yesterday, SWEPCO released an update on the situation. The company says that the grid conditions are currently stable. Quote, "We want to assure you that grid conditions are currently stable. The Southwest Power Pool, our regional transmission organization, has informed or confirmed that the situation has improved, and we are continuing to monitor it closely," says SWEPCO, end quote. So we just want to know what exactly happened that caused all of this. Okay? Don't tell us no shit about the damn grid protection event. What is that? What is that? It says Southwest Power Pool is a balancing authority and reliability coordinator for a 14-state region, which includes SWEPCO service in portions of Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma. Sometimes SPs or SPPs, which is Southwest Power Pool, their responsibilities is to work with owners and operators of generation and transmission facilities to operate the regional power grid safely and balance between supply and demand. Ooh, interesting. And then they go in with their whole damage control speeches that they give, which is all generic. Let's read this. It says, why would SWEPCO disconnect power during a regional power grid emergency? Let's read. If Southwest Power Pool declares an emergency requiring utilities to reduce the electric load on the regional power grid, SWEPCO puts its emergency plan into action. As a regional power grid operator, SPP would require the action as a last resort to avoid widespread power loss and to prevent long-term damage to the regional electric system. The action may be due to extreme temperatures, unexpected electric system problems, tight supplies of electricity across the region, or other power grid emergencies. SWEPCO would implement a series of controlled outages that temporarily interrupt power to customers in parts of its service territory, rotating the outages whenever possible so that customers are not without power any longer than necessary. Right? So that's all going to rolling blackouts. Okay, rolling blackouts is going to come back. All right, it's going to come back, man. And speaking of more blackouts, this was actually today out there in Europe. It says millions without power as outages hit Spain, Portugal, and parts of France, Spanish officials say. Right, so it's definitely not a coincidence. All right, these devils are definitely doing something behind closed doors and setting the stage. Okay, they definitely setting the stage, man. Whether this is a conditioning tactic or this is just them kicking things into motion, we're going to see a lot more of this all throughout the states, all right, in the next coming weeks and months. Okay, when you go into the concept of cyber polygon, okay, this was years ago we were talking about that, and Klaus Schwab said that there was going to be a huge major cyber attack, all right, and that's going to cause the situation, the crisis, to be so dire that it's going to make CV look like a walk in the park. Okay, a small disturbance is what he said. CV was a small disturbance. Look at the damage that it caused, right? But the next thing to come, he said, is going to make that look like a small disturbance. All right, it says millions of people in Spain, Portugal, and parts of France lost power on Monday due to an unknown grid issue. Another one, unknown, right? The Spanish government confirmed to ABC News. The Spanish government said it called an emergency crisis meeting to fix the situation as soon as possible. Red Electrica, the corporation that operates the national electricity grid in Spain, said it is working on restoring power to mainland Spain and Portugal in an update posted on the company's website. All right, these are EU nations, by the way, part of the beast. Okay, Spain and Portugal. Right, it says Red Electrica announced electricity should be fully restored within 6 to 10 hours. Power has already been restored at substations in several areas in the north, south and west of the peninsula, and consumers in these areas are beginning to be supplied, end quote, the update from Red Electrica said. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said during a press conference Monday evening that authorities are working to determine the origins of the power outage. Quote, "We're working on knowing the origins and the reason of this incident, so they don't even know," Sanchez said in Spanish. "We are using all of our resources to solve the issue." Damn. Right? Electricity has been restored in 10 regions in Spain so far, Sanchez added. Red Electrica is very interesting. Red, right? Red Electrica is also working to provide power from generators, which is part of the procedure for restoring power supply, the update added. Authorities, meanwhile, asked people to stay at home and to avoid circulating, while emergency generators were also being put in place. Quote, "Plans to restore the electricity supply have been activated in collaboration with companies in the sector following the zero that occurred in the peninsular system," Red Electrica wrote in a post on X. "The causes are being analyzed and all resources are being dedicated to solving it." Airports, travel, right? Airports in the country were not closed, but they are seeing massive delays. Humberto Delgado Airport in Lisbon was seeing the most canceled and delayed flights of any airport in the world, according to FlightAware, with Barcelona El Prat Airport and Adolfo Suarez Madrid Barajas Airport not far behind. Okay, so that's another update, all right, in regards to these so-called power outages. Okay, and another one here, because remember, these things are all linked together. Okay, a few weeks ago, you had Canada threatening to put tariffs on the U.S. energy supply as well, which will pretty much affect majority of the Northeast, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so we're keeping an eye out, but again, this, like I said, is all intertwined, and they all have you have the correlation, and then you have the causation, right? So let's read here. It says Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile are prepared to raise prices for consumers from Trump's trade war. All right, they've been waiting for this. All right, these niggas be raising prices for no reason. Now they have a reason. They gonna go buck wild. Okay, it says America's leading telecommunications companies, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, have signaled potential price increases for consumers as a direct consequence. Right, that's a causation right there. Right, of select it 1 second. Some weird shit going on out there. Edomites always moving funny. It says they've signaled potential price increases for consumers as a direct consequence of President Donald Trump's ongoing trade war. Right? You see how they say Trump's trade war? They're not saying America's trade war. They're saying Trump's trade war because they have to make him, right, look like the guy who's doing all of this shit. If they say America, then people, we're not supporting this, right? But they're saying Trump's ongoing trade war, right? Is it Trump specifically, just him doing trade wars, nigga? What the fuck is there to trade? He's fucking up the American economy, okay? And you have people saying that they're going to take him out because of that, because he's messing up America's money. All right? But this is all orchestrated. Remember, it's all done from within, destroying the system from within. Okay? And he's part of it. All right? It says particularly the tariffs imposed on imported goods, including smartphones. It says these warnings come amid a volatile economic landscape shaped by high tariffs, primarily targeting China, where many smartphones such as Apple's iPhones are manufactured. So this is all to show you that they're targeting the American people. All right, this is all affecting the consumers. All right, don't make no mistake about it, man. This is all to affect the consumers. They have to completely strip you down of all your comfortable resources, your energy, your food, all these different things are gonna have to go. All right, and then now you are at their every beckoning call. Whatever they say you got to do in order to get some form of relief, you gonna do. Okay, in the summer months when it gets so hot, they say, oh well, the power grid is getting hit with all this heat. We can't sustain the energy, but we do have places, concentration camps. We have places that has power and food. People could come in there, but you gotta get this ID though, right? We must know who you are, right? So we can give you the appropriate amount of resources that you need for your home, you and your household. All right, Section 8. All right, food stamps. All those things are gonna be transferred over to a digital form where if you rely on these things, the government aids and all that, they're gonna get you first. You're gonna be first in line. All right, because you depend on the system. Okay, you depend on the system. All right, that's when a lot of people are gonna have to take that stand and say, nah, I'd rather die. F this. All right, why do you want to? It's a world of sickness and death anyway. Why prolong that shit? If you have a chance to get out, get out. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, hey, listen, if I don't eat and I die, cool. Because guess what? It's not like I'm trying to live to continue the suffering. What's the point of that? It's not like, oh, the people gonna end up taking the C-hip thinking that it's gonna make their life a little bit easier to live. But little did you know that the moment you do that, they have control over you 100%. And your state post C-hip is gonna be worse than pre-C-hip. That's a fact. Okay? And it's going to be worse and worse and worse all the way until the Lord take your ass out with the missiles, man. So make no mistake about it. Do not think for 1 second. Remember, the scriptures tell you, let's get that, right? In the book of Galatians, the 6th chapter, the 7th verse, it says what? Be not deceived, the Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. So you're not going to escape the Lord. Okay, you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to take the C-hip and then I can eat. Well, what kind of food are you going to be eating? Bugs? Because that's what they're going to give you. It's better than nothing. Right? All these different things, man. All right. So, yeah, man, people going to take the C-hip thinking they can escape death. Meanwhile, they run right into it. All right. So continue. It says, executives from the 3 major U.S. carriers have publicly acknowledged that tariffs could force them to pass increased costs onto consumers. Remember, we told you this, that these tariffs are going to be passed on to the consumer. It starts with these phones and phone services, but it shifts into everything else. Okay? Everything else. Okay? And they have a reason, right? Oh, the tariffs is what's causing this. They always wanted to do this shit in the first place. But the tariff is the cause, the catalyst, right? As a T-Mobile CEO, Mike Sievert, in an interview with Yahoo Finance stated, quote, if tariffs come in and they're significant in some way, that's going to have to be borne by the customer. Oh, shit. Right? It says, our model isn't prepared for something like that. Similarly, Verizon CEO Hans Vestberg emphasized financial discipline, noting, in general, if the tariff is going to be as high as they say on the handsets, we are not planning to cover that in our work. That's just not going to be possible. AT&T CEO John Stankey echoed these sentiments, indicating that absorbing such costs would be unsustainable for the company. These statements, reported on April 25th, 2025, underscore the industry's unified stance against absorbing tariff-related expenses. So they're not going to deal with that. They're going to pass it on to the customer. Okay, so you got to bear the burden of your president's decisions. All right, it says the smartphone ecosystem, while currently exempt from the most severe tariffs, faces uncertainty. Okay, Trump's administration has imposed a 20% tariff on China for fentanyl-related concerns, but broader 150% tariffs on Chinese goods remain a possibility if exemptions are lifted. Okay, so 20% on fentanyl, but 145% on the other shit that people actually need and use. Does that even make sense? Doesn't it seem like it's all being done by design and it's intentional to hurt the American people and the economy? Okay, so now they have an excuse to bring in the new digital infrastructure. Since Apple manufactures most iPhones in China, these tariffs could significantly inflate device costs, directly impacting consumers. Yahoo Finance's Brian Sozzi noted that the temporary exemption of smartphones from reciprocal tariffs, quote, could prove temporary, end quote, keeping the threat of substantial price increases alive. The telecom industry's concerns are part of a larger economic disruption caused by Trump's aggressive tariff policies. Since taking office, Trump has raised tariffs on Chinese goods to 145%, prompting retaliatory measures from Beijing and threatening to disrupt trade between the world's two largest economies. Okay? Let's see here. I'm going to jump down a little bit. All right, we're going to skip the fluff. It says, for consumers, the potential price hikes could mean paying, quote, hundreds of dollars more for smartphones, according to estimates cited by Yahoo Finance. And they're only going to get the zombies over here with this shit like this. Like, because if you have a phone that works, you're fine. You make phone calls, you receive text messages, you browse the internet, whatever the case may be, you're good. But these dickheads, excuse my Babylonian, these damn demons, man, they every day, every year, oh, the new iPhone, they join long lines just to go get a new iPhone that has just a new number. iPhone 15 to iPhone 16. Oh, what are the new changes? Oh, we got 3 camera lenses instead of 2. Do you need 3 camera lenses to take a damn picture? What difference does that make? You know? Or it just gives it, a little bit more, more pop to the pictures. Like, really? You spending $1,000 more to go buy a phone just because it has 3 camera lenses instead of 2? Or 1? How many do you need? Yo, people, man, zombies, bro. Zombies. All right? It says this could lead to demand destruction, where consumers opt for cheaper alternatives or delay upgrading their devices. The telecoms are responding with aggressive promotions to mitigate customer backlash. All right? So they're going to be pushing that shit on you. Hey, you call a damn a phone company or internet provider, and you're on the phone voicing your problems. Maybe the internet is slow or something is happening with your cable box or whatever the case may be. As soon as you call these niggas, they try to sell you some shit. Like, oh, have you heard about our new phone plan? Nigga, I didn't call you for no damn phone plan, bro. And they keep telling you about it. You're like, yo, bro, I'm calling because my internet is slow right now. What can we do about it? I'm paying this amount of money, and you told me this is what I'm going to get, but I'm not getting that. So what are we going to do about it? Well, what we could do about it is that, we could get you on a new phone plan, only $25 a month. And you can get this, you can get this, you can get that, and we could upgrade your speed too. Always trying to sell you some bullshit, man. And people always buy it. Americans will always buy it because they don't think. They just consume. That's why they call them consumers. All right, they're not clients, they're just consumers, man. Let's see what a consumer is. Let's look it up real quick. Let's see what we got. Consumer says one who squanders or wastes. These are useless eaters. Okay? It says one who uses up goods or articles, one who destroys the exchangeable value of a commodity by using it. Okay? Damn. Consumers. This is the title they give people. Right? You're a consumer. You're a destroyer of goods and the value of commodities. Okay? Oh man, that's sad. It says, for instance, Verizon announced a program offering free phones with trade-ins, while T-Mobile and AT&T are emphasizing value-driven messaging to retain subscribers amid a tariff-driven price war. And then it goes on and on and on. All right, about the different examples between the 3 different telecommunication companies, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. All right, but again, this is all part of the takedown of America. All right, they're attacking the people, or the working class, so-called, the workers, the Aimal, in the book of Job, the 20th chapter. Okay, the laborers. All right, working class, because again, ultimately the goal is to have the ruling class elites, all right, the military, and then the workers. That's it. And the military's job is to enforce the rules that the elites are going to put down on the working class, who are all sihibed. Okay? And there's another article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to pick apart this article real fast and then close it out, right? It says, China imports have come to a halt, which could result in empty store shelves by summer. This was dated April 25th, 2025. Recent reports suggest that U.S. consumers may face empty store shelves by summer 2025, driven by a significant drop in imports from China. This development, linked to escalating trade tensions and new tariff policies, has sparked widespread concern across retail sectors. Multiple news outlets have highlighted the potential for supply chain disruptions, particularly in industries reliant on Chinese goods such as apparel, electronics, and toys. Okay. Sheesh. According to a post on X, imports from China have reportedly dropped by 20. Hold on. Dropped by 25 to 64%, with some estimates suggesting a $24 billion monthly shortfall in supply chains. Wow. Yeah, man, I believe they're doing this, setting up a supply chain chaos to mask the system going down. Okay, they have an avenue now. They could chase. They could say, oh, look, the tariffs is what caused this. Now, how do we work around this? How do we fix this? You know, rather than, oh man, this has been building for so long, the system was going down, and tariffs is what pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. You know, but over the years, this has been something that's been building for years. Okay. It says the potential for empty shelves underscores the fragility of global supply chains and the challenges of rapidly diversifying trade partnerships. It says consumers are advised to monitor developments and consider early purchases for high demand items, particularly ahead of holiday season. And it's not going to be no holiday season this year. All right. While the full extent of the shortages remain uncertain, the convergence of reports from Fox News, Newsmax, and other sources suggests a looming challenge for the U.S. retail landscape. All right. So this is, hey, if the U.S. retail landscape is going to take a hit, how much more the mom and pop shops? All right. How much more those independent businesses, right? They're going, it's over with, man. It's pretty much over with. And then once that's done, you think of the other essentials, the medication, you know, and so on and so forth. All right. That people, these highly medicated psychiatric wardens depend on, known as Americans, right? U.S. citizens. Yeah, we're going to see what's going to happen with that. All right. Completely obese, sick, demented, twisted, psychologically, challenged, right? It's over with, man. It's going to be a conflagration. All right. It says continued monitoring of trade policies and supply chain adjustments will be essential to understanding the trajectory of this issue. Well, it's a wrap. It's game over. We've been saying this for years, that there's going to come a time where this whole system is going to go down. And once it goes down, it's game over. Okay? It's game over, man. All right? And they always say it's going to affect those who are in underserved communities. So-called black and brown communities are going to be severely impacted by these things because it's done by design. Okay? And that's also done by design of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Book of Jeremiah chapter 30 and verse 7. It says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Okay? He shall be saved out of it, man. So we're seeing the signs. All right? It's all the signs that are pointing to a time like never before. Our Lord says that when we see some of these signs, all right, these are going to be the beginning of sorrows. All right? So it means that there's a time of sorrows, but these are just the beginning of it. All right? And beautifully, we're seeing these signs. All right? We're seeing these signs. Let me see something. All right, here's the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and verse 22. It says, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. All right, so those are the signs, man. It's all biblical prophecy. And this is what's going to lead to that chaos that's written off in 2nd Ezra 15, going to a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. For what? For lack of bread and for great tribulation. Okay, so all hell's about to break loose, man. It's going to be a very, very chaotic rest of the year if things continue to go as they are right now. Okay, there will be an emergency energy crisis. Anyway, I'm going to leave it off there. Lord willing, you were edified and informed. In closing, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh, the water Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, and until next time, Shalom.